young people might end up almost resurrecting demons that we thought that humanity had gotten past. Connects to the way that AI works is that it is looking at the love that we have written in English language in the past. So if we think it's just heteronormative, that's absolutely wrong too, right? It has all sorts of other biases, right? The first thing is that it's trained on mostly English text. That's going to be the Western literature canon, right? So it's going to be not only heteronormative, it is what love is defined in Western society. That's kind of the first piece. The second piece is that AI has a trailing bias, right? It's trained on historical data. So the biases that existed in history, whether it was on race, whether it was on heteronormativity, whether it is on a Western definition of love, a Western conceptualization of love, all of that is baked in. And then on top of it, we see that the concept of love is just changing, right? The concept of what are the norms of love absolutely are changing over time. We've thought about problems of consent much more in the last 10 years in my life than we talked about before that, right? I think that all of these issues are baked into the AI, right? Because it is trained on historical data. It has learned to mimic the tropes of love that it has seen in historical data. And because of that, it's going to be heteronormative. It is going to reflect a Western conceptualization of love, as well as it might very well start parroting some of the biases that are there in history. There are two aspects of gender roles in AI that I think are worth talking about. The first one is that it absolutely does internalize the gender roles of the data that it has seen. This has been actually known even before these chatbots hit the scene, that all sorts of AI models that understand language end up internalizing gendered relationships, right? Just because if you're trained on the internet, you will start associating things like nurse with the female gender and pilot with the male gender. This was a classical example that even the first ones of these AI models, these large AI models that were trained years ago, were internalizing, right? They absolutely internalize them because they look for correlations. They are not looking for causal mechanisms. They're just trying to understand the correlations with words, right? And if the word nurse in the data that it was trained on is correlated with the word she, it is going to internalize that gender role. The same thing with absolutely any other thing you could think about. That's just a consequence of the technology, right? That it is not trying to understand an underlying mechanism. It's not understanding that the reason that a person is a nurse is because they went to nursing school, or the reason that a person is called a nurse is because they do this job. It is learning that these are the surrounding words around nurse that tend to happen in the data that I'm seeing. That is the underlying understanding of language that an AI has today. And because of that, it'll pick up absolutely any bias that is out there. In fact, it will learn to exploit those biases because those biases are informative. They have predictive value in its mind, right? Those biases have predictive value on past data. So on the data that it's being trained on, data that is being evaluated on, it looks great. The problem is humanity is a changing target, right? That humanity is a moving target where we constantly evolve our gender roles. We constantly evolve our definitions of love, and that may not reflect what data that it has been trained on. Another thing that is also worth talking about is that our embodiments of AI, when we think about Alexa, when we think about GPS, when we think about even these shows, these movies that have tried to talk about people falling in love with AI, the AI has always been a woman and has always been a generic woman's voice. And I think that that's another interesting gendered piece over there, right? That it's like, I almost want to say there's something deeply misogynistic about it, right? That it's like, this is a tool, so it is a woman, right? That it's someone who's helping you out. It's a helper, right? So it has to, it only makes sense as a woman, right? And I think that that's something that is baked in to our consciousness when we built these types of tools. And I would also hazard a guess that many of these new chatbots or many of these things that are purporting to give companionship also have that similar gendered aspect baked into the way that they're designed. So it's not just that AI can internalize gendered roles. I think that there's an active effort to gender them, right? And I think that there's something scary about that as well.